All right, welcome everyone. It is Thursday, August 4th, and we are in the second half of our first week here. Hopefully, you have had the opportunity to download the assignments from week one and taken a look at them. If you were unavailable to make the first class, I have posted up an archive. I did have a bit of trouble getting that up yesterday after it was converted. I could not get the Google Drive upload to work and cooperate with me, but I have succeeded and provided a link on FSO in your FSO inbox. So, as an announcement, there is a link available for that. And so I will be hopefully much more successful in getting everything set up for this one. I'm going to try to get it out much earlier than that. So hopefully you've taken the opportunity to check out the assignments. Our first session was really an overview of the class with a discussion of your first week one assignments. We are going to get into some other topics this afternoon. We discussed your first composition called 2D Platformer, and that is when you download all of the assignments off of FSO, you will get access to the game and access to the project and the materials overall. And we talked about the game composition, but we didn't really get into the production assignment or the technical assignment. And those will not take as long. They are based off generally off of the 2D platformer assignment that you will be working on. So let me do this, right? So last time we kind of left off here where we were discussing the different games, and we talked in depth about 2D platformer, and then I introduced Angry Bots, which is your game from week 2 coming up, and Palace of Renthalion here, which is your game for week 3. And I ended there, really, and did a quick description of your production technique and your technical assignment, which is the game capture, but I didn't dive into that in too much detail. So I have the production technique session that when you download the assignment, it's mainly comprised of a logic session. And so we're going to take a moment here and talk about a couple of the different techniques that are presented in your production technique assignment, kind of go through different steps of how you will approach this project. And then we'll briefly talk about the game capture that you will be doing also once you have completed all of the music for the game and tested it out. So when you open this logic session, it comes with, well, where'd that go? It comes with some notes on the overall project itself, and this is really a summary of the PDF that is included with the rest of the materials. But it really outlines the 3 different parts of this assignment. You have 3 different folder tracks, and in these folder tracks, if you're not familiar with folder tracks in Logic, they were kind of before track stacks, but they allowed you to put an entire section of a logic session in a particular folder. So if I double click this, what looks like a regular region on this part 1 track, double click, it brings me to what looks like a completely different session, but it's a couple of tracks and regions set up within a folder track inside of Logic. So I can hit this up arrow to always go backwards and go out of that. If I double clicked into part 2, I could go into this section. Let's make this a little bit more viewable. Let's see here. There's all this stuff here. And again, I can hit this up arrow to go backwards. I can go to part 3, and well, I guess I'm just adjusting all of my tracks. And always hit this up arrow to go into any one of the parts and go backwards to the main session. So that's how you quickly navigate around this session and go from the different parts, part 1, 2, and 3. We'll start here in part 1, where there is a WAV file provided, and you are going to do a basic audio loop, which is known as topping and tailing the audio loop, finding the top or the beginning of the file and cutting it off and editing it there, going to the end of the 4 or 8 bar loop that you find, editing it there on the last downbeat, tailing it, and then making sure that it's set up to loop. So this is basic looping. This is when you would be provided a previously composed piece of music, a source piece of music from someplace, and you wanted to make it loop so that you can make it a bit more interactive and have it progress in a particular directional order that you want. So easy to set up these audio loops. And to make this, hopefully you have edited some files and cut an audio loop out at some point in your audio production career. But if not, here's an opportunity to make sure that you get everything set up correctly. So here is our WAV file. Let's make sure we can hear this and it's working just fine. All right, is that broadcasting? You can hear the music, you can hear me also. I think it looks like it's good on my side. All right, excellent. All right, so the music is very rhythmic, very much loop-based, so you find easy points at the beginning and the end of a file where it would loop nicely. So all you're going to do, they're also kind of marked with cymbal crashes. You can find a cymbal crash and find the downbeat or the beginning of your loop. Well, let's not go back that far. And eventually you are going to edit a low, medium, and high intensity version of these loops. So if you listen to the music, there's a really obvious 1, 2, and 3 sections here. If we listen in the first versus somewhere in the second, there's more intensity, there's more instrumentation. All the way up into this third section. So you want to make sure that you cut 3 separate loops out of here. Almost sounds like some Daft Punk, absolutely. It's got a good, nice groove to it overall. You can find the cymbal crash. Those are pretty good downbeats to use. And all you are going to do is zoom way into the beginning of the cymbal crash. Let me do this again. Right, so there's our cymbal crash. And we want to zoom all the way at the beginning, right at the beginning of our waveform, and find a 0 crossing point where it's at the beginning and it's not above or below the middle line here. We want to go ahead and split this and separate this into 2 parts, and then we're going to zoom all the way out and hit play again. Oh, well, actually, maybe this might not be a really good place. Let's see. Oh, no, we got time. It's glitching out on me. What's going on here? All right, find another. There's another cymbal crash. Cymbal crash will be the beginning of the next loop, so it will be the end of our current loop. So we go find that cymbal crash again, and then just zoom way into it. Find the downbeat, find a 0 crossing point, get it as close as possible there, and split it. And all we have to do is listen to it at this point. Another thing that's going to help you really quickly is if you right-click up in the marquee up at the top here with your kind of your timeline with all the numbers, there is an option that says Auto Set Locators. And with this turned on, you'll notice that my yellow bar up here follows the size of whatever region that I've clicked. Like now that I've edited an 8-bar 4-bar loop, I didn't count. Now that I've edited a loop, I have it marked at the beginning and the end. What's going on here? Hold on, I think I had some other Turn some other things off here. I turned too many things off. Turned off my microphone. What else can I turn off? That should be good for now. Question here in the chat. Overloads, are you running audio through the Mac? Yeah, I'm using Soundflower. And it might just be a version that's not cooperating with me. So, let's see if that... I had some other programs open. So we'll see if that operates any better. So, let me do that again. With auto set locators, let's turn it off. Notice as I click around, the yellow bar doesn't move. As I right click and turn auto set locators on, it moves around, works a little bit better overall. So I listen to this. Oops, there it goes. So we have a seamless loop there. And you know what? The real smart idea here, I skipped a very important step, is I'm actually going to drag this down and hold Option and make a copy of this so that I don't ever mess up the original file. In case I completely screwed something up, I can go back to it. And I'll just do that again real quick. Find. There it is. Cymbal crash. Let's see here. Where did I go? No, I'm throwing Pro Tools commands at it. Hit S to split. Zoom way, way back out. Listen to cymbal crash. Let me try something else here. Hold on. Buffer size. Check. All right, let's see if that works any better. Find the next cymbal crash here. There it is. Zoom in here. Find the zero crossing point. Split it. And zoom back out. And check this and listen to it. Cool. And I have a seamless loop. And eventually you would go through here and split out another loop. Go over here, you'd split another loop there, and then go back and delete. Right, so you'd eventually have 3 loops. They would all be seamless on the downbeat, and you would use and just eventually bounce them out and name them properly. You will also download extra, extra audio files from the Westar Music Library. There's information in the PDF on accessing some music tracks there, so you have some other music that you can choose and create your own loops from. So that is just very basic looping, topping and tailing of an audio file and editing it. I'm going to back out of there and go to part 2 here. Here I'm going to double click into part 2, and I'm going to zoom out so we can see what's going on here. All right, we have 2 pieces of music. These are MIDI regions, right? Currently it's in MIDI. We want to bounce it out as an audio file. We have 2 pieces of music. This is a more electronic piece of music, and this is a more orchestral piece of music. And we are going to bounce this to an audio file and make sure that that audio file loops seamlessly and loops just fine. So let's listen to this. Let's see what we got. drums, bass line, that's bass line, lead line, harmony, melody. We want to bounce this out. If you were to bounce this normally, what's going on there? If you wanted to bounce this normally, you would just bounce this to an audio track. So I'll just delete this audio track, create a new track. No, create a new track. No, create a new track. There we go. And it's going to be a software track. No, it's going to be an audio track. Create that. And we are going to bounce this, so we have it highlighted to the boundaries that we want. And we hit Apple B to bounce. This is a regular old bounce, 16-bit 44.1 stereo files. And we do not want to include the audio tail because we want it to be the exact boundaries of the loop. It is PCM file, start and end is correct. We can bounce it offline, and we hit OK. And we're going to bounce this. We are going to call this electronic. Whatever. We're going to call this electronic. How many? 6? 7? There you go. 6. Okay. So we are going to pull this into our library. Let's see. No, not into library. We're going to pull this into our session. Really? Come on. Browsers. There we go. All right, we're going to take electronic music file 6, which is blank. Why are you blank? Oh, because I have the file volume down a whole lot. Hold on just a sec. Let me do this. You go away. And, all right, I'm going to pull those up. And how do I do this without blasting? Pull it down here. Okay. All right. Yes. Yes. Oh, whatever. 7. We'll keep going. All right, back into browsers. Take electronic music 7. Oh goodness, let's not kill ourselves here. There we go. And we drag this in. Now if we listen to this file, turn off browsers, mute all of this, listen to this file. All right, so it cuts off the end of this crash symbol. If we listen to the original one here. At the very end here, there's a crash. So as it loops around, and if I stop it, you can hear there's a delay, there's reverb, there's all this extra stuff in here that helps it create a seamless loop that when I listen to the bounced file or the bounce in place would do the exact same thing. Listen to the crash symbol at the end. Listen to it when it doesn't glitch. It gets cut off every single time in the bounce. Every single time it reaches the end of this file, it cuts off the audio. So we want to make sure we want to bounce out a seamless loop. So in order to do that, we're going to take the original MIDI files, and we're just going to duplicate, well, not the MIDI files, MIDI regions here, and duplicate them out to be twice as long. Then all we have to do is make sure our boundaries are set at the beginning and end. We can just bounce it again. And 16-bit 44.1, offline, no audio tail. We want to make sure it adds back to the project. And we will do I have my fader down. Bounce. Yes. Go. Try 8 again. No. Fine. Go to 9. All right. So now when I take this file and bring it in, I've bounced the file to be twice as long. And all I have to do to this to create a seamless loop is use the second half of it. You can hear there's a solid crash cymbal that plays all the way through, but in the second time, it gets cut off. So all we're going to do is go directly here, right in the middle, which is 197, between 193 and 201. We're going to take this file and we're going to split it in half. We're going to delete the first half and use the second half. When you do this, you'll hear the cymbal crash. All of that, anything with a reverb tail, anything with a delay that goes across a boundary, anything that would get cut off, you can actually create a seamless loop by doubling out the length of the file and editing it and using the second half. So, real quick, this is all that's happening. You take the original files. Oops, let's not do that. Take the original files. You duplicate them. You set them up, the boundaries, to be twice as long, and then you bounce it out. When you bounce it out, you create the new file that is twice as long. Drag it into your session, and then all you have to do is chop it in half. Oops, that's not chopping in half. That's chopping in half. All right, that will give you, and you just bounce out that file. It's 8 bars long. It will give, or sorry, it's 4 bars long. It will give you the complete seamless loop. You'll also do that over here. There's an orchestral loop. When you stop it or pause it, it will have a whole bunch of reverb, instrument decay that gets cut off at the end of the file whenever it loops around. So use the same technique to create a seamless loop. And the third one here, when you go to part 3, there are 2 files here that sound really interesting, but they do not loop. They're kind of hard files or difficult files to make loop. This one's more of a drone. This one has a little bit more movement in it. But it might be an interesting texture or pad to create a loop from. And you could actually sit there for quite a while and maybe edit something down. Let's actually Remember to make a copy of it. Mute the original one. So we could probably spend some time and try to make something loop here. Let's see. Right? It's there's a lot of pitch changes, timbre changes, volume changes in there, and so it would take quite a while to make something loop seamlessly just by trying to find the same beginning and end of each one of the cues. So in order to make this files like this loop pretty quickly and easily, all we're going to do is chop out a chunk of the file that's a little bit longer than the final version that we want. So we're going to use this part to actually loop. And in order to make this loop nicely, all I have to do is split it in half. Just don't even really have to pay attention to where the split is. I typically go for somewhere in the middle, but this works pretty much with whatever edit you make. Then you are going to take the left part, the one that you just split, just take the left section. You're going to drag it over towards the right, but not completely past. So you're going to leave a little bit of overlap between the two. And at this point, the outside edges are perfectly seamless because they were directly together before the edit. So now we just made the inside part of the edit the outside part of our loop. Now I'm going to select both of these files. I can hear the loop. Right, so at the point that it loops, it's just fine. It's perfectly seamless, but here in the middle, oops. That's pretty darn close. So what I'm going to do to make this as invisible as possible, so I'm going to do a giant crossfade across the middle here. Make it even there. And now at the outside edges, everything's going to loop. Alright, so this works with any synths or pads or drones. All you have to do is chop out a section kind of larger than what you want. You're going to split that part in half and then flip the two sides. Flip the left side over the right, but leave a little bit of overlap, and then do a big crossfade across the middle. Maybe balance that out a little bit. And no matter where you make those edits, it always works because of how you are setting it up, right? So notice as I'm doing all of these edits, it's pretty blind. It doesn't matter. I'm not really paying attention. And of course, in a true situation, depending on what you needed, you could certainly take quite a bit of time to find the correct loop points, but it's just important to notice that this works seamlessly wherever you are. All right, so those are part 1, 2, and 3 of the production technique session, where you will be editing out the files, topping and tailing files for loops. You're going to be bouncing audio files by duplicating the length of the audio file or the MIDI regions and bouncing it to audio, and then you will be doing editing of these final files to chop it in half and crossfade the middle to create a seamless loop. So that should give you a good approach to the production technique assignment. your game capture, you will be using software, QuickTime, and software called Loopback in order to capture your audio actually working in the game. So I briefly mentioned towards the end of our last session that you can test your music files working in the game by taking a copy of the game itself and placing your audio in a specific folder. So here's a copy of the game application. I just right-click on it and choose Show Package Contents. And there's a folder called Contents. I choose inside of Contents, there is Data. Inside of Data, there is Streaming Assets, and then you will recognize the two folders, Music and Sound Effects. Of course, your music folder will be blank because that's your job, is to create the music for this project. But eventually, when they are completed, these are the 9 files that you will be creating, named and formatted exactly like this. 3 ending files, 3 intro files, and 3 main loops. And then the next time, and close that out, the next time you run the game, you will actually hear your music working in the game application. So once that is set up and you test it out and you maybe make some tweaks and changes to the soundtrack to get it sounding as best as it can and as you would like, we're going to use a couple of different tools to do a screen capture. And you probably have used QuickTime at some point in a previous class. Actually, let me throw that question out to you guys here in the chat. At some point in a previous class, in some project, you have used QuickTime to do a capture of either your video camera or your screen. Give me a yes or a no. I just always want to make sure that they are still doing that project, wherever that is. Okay, cool. So you understand certainly the basics of capturing using QuickTime. So all we have to do, you go into File and you choose New Screen Recording, and you can hit Record here, and it'll ask you where do you actually want to do the recording. You can select a part of your screen, or you can do full screen. And that captures your screen, the video, but it doesn't do anything for your audio. And if you hit this little down arrow next to the record button, you will see all of your audio inputs. I have quite a few here because I test out a whole bunch of different stuff. But by default, you probably only see your microphone or maybe an 1/8 inch input into your computer if you still have one of those. So you don't have an easy way of capturing the audio that you put into the game. So there's another application called Loopback that you can use. I don't want to join your mail list. No. New version. No. I don't want to do it right now. So you open up, there's a link to install or download and then install Loopback. Loopback is a great program. It's a free application, at least for our purposes. Anything beyond 15 minutes, I think it shuts off, but you certainly, please do not create 15-minute long demo videos. But our Loopback option here is going to allow us to choose an application, and we of course have chosen 2D platformer. You might have to select application and navigate to where it is, wherever it is on your computer. Then you turn off mute audio sources, because I think this is default checked, and you turn on the fact that you want to listen to it through your speakers. So what this does is the game plays directly out of your speakers. There's not an easy way to get it into the screen capture. So the screen capture only wants to record things from external sources. But since we have an internal source, it's a little bit more difficult to set up and capture it. It says here, what if we are using an Apollo interface? If you have the ability to do a inside of your computer a loopback sort of recording without the loopback application, that's perfectly fine. If you are using if you are using your audio interface and you just want to hear it, then you have a selection of all of your different sources, and whatever your default output is, you can use that, whatever your speakers are hooked up to or your headphones. you will choose that. So this allows you, now you should be able to go into QuickTime. Oops, I don't want to start recording yet. QuickTime and set up the, let me just turn this off and load it back up. You should be able to set up the audio input. What did I do? Oh, check. There we go. Don't use. Try that again. There it is. Sorry, I didn't have it turned on over here. It should show up as an audio input into your screen recording. Once you do that, you will actually see the audio bouncing up and down here. You should probably turn this down because you are already listening to it through the monitor source. If you turn this up, it'll probably create a delay or something like that. So, and this is a very handy application for all of your audio. You can basically, anything inside of your computer that makes noise can be recorded into any other application that records audio. It can go into QuickTime, it can go into Audacity or Logic or wherever it is. I'm using Soundflower to do all of the recordings, all of the archives and the broadcasts and all of that. So this is my microphone. You can see it bouncing up and down. So it could have the audio going into this. And once you set all of this up, you then have, you should be able to see the audio bouncing up and down. Once you have all of this set up, really that is the most challenging aspect of the project. Loopback should perform pretty stable for you. If you have any issues with it, please contact me ahead of time and let me know. There's, I guess I should point out that there is somewhere, hold on just a sec, campus, no, online, week 1, what are we doing, game capture. Week 1, game capture. Here we go. There is a PDF workflow that goes through the process. Oops, that's the. Let me find the correct one here. Sorry about that. Hold on just a sec. There we go. So it goes through step by step on how to download and install Loopback, how to get it all set up, how to get QuickTime set up, and then what to actually record. I am certainly not judging your performance in playing the video game. I want to make sure that the whole process is set up and working for you, that you can capture the game with your music in it and have a video to deliver. Then you will take the video and upload it to YouTube. Let me scroll down here. Upload the video to YouTube so that you can then share it on FSO. Because the videos can get kind of large overall, and there's a 500 megabyte limit. Oh, where did I go? I disappeared. A 500 megabyte limit on, I think QuickTime did something. Hold on. Oh, there I am. I'm big. I'm super huge. So the videos that are recorded in QuickTime can get quite large very quickly. And so we'll share them on YouTube in order to be able to get around that 500 megabyte limit on FSO. All right. So that should give you a solid direction and heads up of what is going on with, let's see, I think a whole bunch of my stuff closed. With the rest of our week's assignments, I didn't get to all of that in the last round. I was discussing too much stuff, so we wanted to make sure we hit on all of that intro material. Let me find where we are now. Okay, so let's get into the actual topics for this afternoon. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them up in the chat or send me an email as you're working on all this stuff. Again, download and play the game and maybe work with loopback and a QuickTime just set up a quick video capture. Just make sure that all of the audio and video works. Run into any of those technical problems, hopefully here early on. You don't want it to be Sunday night before the deadline and the technical issues are getting in the way. So most people have really no issue whatsoever, but just in case you want to get a heads up or a head start on it. Hold on just a sec. Before we get into these topics here, I'm going to take a quick pause. All right. So, our discussion this afternoon is really going to be about the role of a music composer in a game team, the different jobs working in the game industry, money and clients, and finding projects and figuring out what to charge, and just the basics of not really of getting started, because at the end of the month in week 4 we do a how do you get started in the industry, how do you find clients and find people to work with and find current projects. But more currently, we're going to talk about the overall structure of a game team, working on a game, kind of like a film. It's a team sport. It's not just a single artist in control of the creative process. It is with a game. You have the audio aspect of everything. You have the video. Graphics and animation, and then you have all of the programming and interactivity, which is some of what we discussed in our first session, or at least just kind of preliminarily talked about. So I know that people coming into this degree program and certainly then through this class have a wide variety of experience with games, or little to no experience with games at all, and that's perfectly fine as you progress through the class. Really, the purpose here is to show you that your music is just as viable in a game, and if there was an opportunity to work on a game project, an interactive project in some way, that you would be aware of what it is about and what it takes, and the industry as a whole, and the opportunities that are available to you, so that you understand what it entails and what it involves. So I understand that people coming to the degree program want to work with music in all of its forms. They either want to be the artist, or they want to be the engineer or the producer. They want to maybe work with the business side of things, in the promotion and the marketing of the artist. And so folks coming into the program either have some music theory experience, understand their instrument, understand a bit of performance, and want to learn more of the production side, of the technical side, of understanding all of the tools. I also know that folks coming in understand the tools and understand the software and more of the technical aspects, but want to understand a bit more of the theory and the how the music is actually formed at its base, separate from the technology. So the real point here is that anything that interests you in music production, whether it is songwriting or composition or the actual production process, recording process itself, then all of that is available in games also. Anything that you are interested in games is also available there. So let's see here, right here. There's all sorts of different job roles that. Oh, did my sound go out? Sorry. Let me jump back over here. Well, actually, let's jump here. Let me start over again. Where I know folks coming through the degree program overall have a wide variety or experience with games. Those coming through either either love and are interested in the industry and how it works and are interested in getting involved in the industry. There are those, though, that haven't played games in a very long time or at all, and that's perfectly fine. One of the big purposes of the class is to expose you to the games industry, to show you that whatever you are interested in the in the music industry is also there in games. So whether it is the songwriting or the composition or the production and actual recording of the music, then it is all of that is also encompassed in games. So whether it is obviously this is what we're here for, is for music composition. This is where we will focus. We'll focus kind of on the role of a music composer. How do they fit into a game team? Working on a game is kind of like working on a film. It's sort of like a team sport where there are a lot of people involved. It's not the sole creative direction of a single artist. And your music is there to support the creative direction of a producer or a director. But beyond just the music composition aspect, there is lots of other parts or facets to audio for games. Maybe you're interested more in the business side of things, in the cultivation of the artist and working with their labels or getting exposure for the artist. Working with record labels and the artist teams and their managers and their lawyers to acquire the license and rights. A lot of games require licensed popular music that is licensed from current artists who can gain a lot of exposure from their music being in a constant rotation in a game. So if you are the artist or you are promoting an artist and you want some solid exposure, maybe there's an opportunity for your music to be licensed in the game, or you work for a game company dealing with artists, acquiring all the licenses. Think of sports games, think of music and dancing games, think of racing games. A lot of those have licensed popular music soundtracks. A lot of that started from Tony Hawk when it had an original punk rock soundtrack on the PlayStation. Next here, maybe you are interested more in studio life, owning a studio, working in a studio, being a recording engineer, mixing engineer. A lot of studios are finding work in the games industry as recording their music, recording dialogue, recording Foley. A lot of game companies do not have the ability to have studios built in their offices. They're working in an office space. They're cubicles and thin walls. They don't have. You can't be making a ton of noise, and you don't want all of the noise of the office leaking into your recordings. So a lot of that work goes out to existing studios. There is the aspect of recording. There's also sound design. I'd say there's probably even more opportunity in sound design for video games than there is for composers, and that's just a reality of the numbers or of the how many people are involved in the game. If there's one music composer, there can easily be one or two or three or five sound designers working on a game project because there's so many sounds involved. So having skills in sound design and understanding how sounds work in games is definitely an additional good sound skill set to have, because that means that they only need to hire one person to do all of the audio for the game, and they can pay you twice as much, hopefully. But we'll see if that's actually the truth. But there is a lot of opportunity for audio work in games. On location and field recording. Instead of being in a cold, dark studio, if you'd rather be out in the sunshine, blowing stuff up and shooting weapons and crashing cars, a lot of games need custom sound effects libraries built for them. Whether it is weapons or vehicles or ambiances or locations or animals or whatever the source material is, there is a lot of need for custom libraries, so some big game doesn't sound like another company's game. So there are individuals that all they do is travel around and record libraries of sounds for game companies. Implementation is the process of actually getting the music working in the game. Implementation is more of a technical process of understanding how the music is functioning in the game. They speak you might speak the language of music and also a bit of the technology. These are not necessarily the programmers, but this is a bit more of the technical side of how the music is functioning and how it's supposed to play back. So there are job roles of people that are just involved. They don't necessarily make the audio, but they implement or set up how the audio is going to play back in the game. And of course, one of the best reasons for being involved in music for games is if you already love video games, you enjoy playing games for. You can end up playing games for a living. If it's there's a very important idea that I talk about through the class called game research, which means you need to be playing video games and keeping up with the games industry and paying attention to the newest and latest games out there and understanding what's working and what's popular and what's good and where the best audio and soundtrack comes from. So this is good, but this is also means you're playing the same game over and over and over again. It's kind of like recording an album. By the time you're done with recording your album, you don't want to hear it anymore. But there are certainly all sorts of benefits. Let me jump back to so if it's not just the different skills in the industry that are required. If it's just money that interests you and it kind of guides your direction in the industry, then there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of budgets. There are games out there that are seem to make $1 billion every once in a while, and it's not just the big companies. There's less of a bar of entry because there are so many independent game companies. Now that we have the internet and digital distribution, games selling for $1, we have things like the iTunes store, the App Store, the Google Play Store, we have Steam. There are all sorts of online stores that people buy and sell games. And it allows for people to sell their game where they wouldn't have to put it into a box and sell it on a shelf in a Walmart or a GameStop or a Best Buy or something like that. Now they can just sell it online and distribute it in a much more efficient way. And so this is you get a copy of your textbook, hopefully from this month, and it is a composer's guide to game music. It is a great text. The class kind of loosely follows along with it, and it is a great source for just some good supplementary information and numbers and the amount of money running through the different industries is kind of hard to track overall. It depends on who you're talking to and what you're talking about, because comparing the game industry versus the music industry versus the movie industry all depends on exactly what you're talking about, whether you're talking about box office sales or physical DVDs or Blu-ray discs or game discs, or you're talking about the hardware themselves, the consoles or computers or whatever. So getting overall numbers is a bit difficult, but according from the textbook, according to Reuters, video games were a $78 billion industry in 2012. And there are some benefits not benefits, there are different techniques, let's say, that the games industry has been using over time for learning how to properly make money in the industry, meaning that with the current digital distribution and the internet, with the onset of the internet, with digital distribution, with piracy, the games industry, the music industry, the movie industry, any sort of entertainment that went to a digital media has had troubles over the years and now decades of how they are going to make money in this new paradigm and how they are going to distribute their product and make sure that not everybody can completely I won't necessarily define it as steal, but improperly use their property. So with the advent of the internet, games are unique to movies and music, where movies and music exist separate from the internet and separate from computers. But games do not. The internet, when the internet comes around, it kind of sideswipes or sweeps the feet out from the movie and the music industry and the games industry or computers in general. Everybody has to figure out what's going on. But the games industry has been able to react in a couple of different ways because they are computers. Can be part of the internet in a much more direct sort of way. You get things like microtransactions or downloadable content or pay to play or freemium or advertising in games. And these are all just words and different ways that people have tried making money. Now you have apps that are 99 cents or they're free and they make money off of their advertising, all sorts of different ways of learning how to make money in this whole new market. So there's a lot of opportunity. There is a lot of possibility and budgets as games have been able to successfully navigate some of this. So the next couple of slides here are pulled from the Game Sound Conference Industry Survey. And this is a really good resource. Are you going to cooperate with me here? Let me do this. You can follow the link in the PDF. And it will lead you to another document. And let me see here. Game Sound Conference. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Once it cooperates. Oh, there it is. Game Sound Con. So, there is a great website out there for the Game Sound Conference, gamesoundcon.com. And the Game Sound Conference is a conference. If you happen to be anywhere near Los Angeles and had quite a bit of money, then it would be a fun place to go and learn all sorts of stuff. It is a great resource overall, but they've also done some other really cool stuff for the public that they've released. And one of those is a game audio salary survey. In order to just help out the industry as a whole, they release a document that describes or asks a whole bunch of people in the industry how much their annual salaries are, what are they making off of different projects. And so if you have the opportunity, go ahead and follow the link. You can search it out either on Google or you can follow the link through the PDF. But you should definitely check out the information so that you can get an idea of what people are making in the industry and how it all sort of breaks down. It's a lot of information through here. But this is where I'm pulling some of the information in the next couple of slides. Average salary for an employee. This is in-house, full-time, either sound designer, music composer, and involved with audio in some sort of way. A lot of these might be a little bit more weighted towards the coast. It all depends on the cost of living and where you are located overall. But this would be the results from their just a general annual salary question. Average AAA title project fee, $76,000. AAA title means the big ones, the ones you see on TV advertised, millions of dollars behind them, hopefully making millions of dollars back. And this might be an average project fee. Now, that's not just the $1 million ones. That's the smaller ones involved that hit the millions of dollars mark that end up turning big time. But this might be the per project fee for the audio team. And it's not necessarily just directly into the pocket of the composer. That is for studio time and recording and musicians and engineers and extra equipment and whatever you need. Now, this can easily get up much into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in the large projects, but you average it out, and it becomes a bit more reasonable overall. So big budgets for the average indie or casual game. These are the smaller ones, maybe some of the popular ones not online, on mobile devices, iOS and Android, might have a more common average of around 10,000 per project. Again, that's not entirely directly into the composer's pocket. You have to pay any other costs. Game music is overwhelmingly work for hire, meaning that they would rather throw money up front and buy the music outright. Typically, it is music made while working on that project specifically. They wouldn't rather take a track that was used somewhere else. Only 2% of composers of large budget games reported receiving payments per unit sales. So this is per royalty, like a royalty rate. It's mostly a buyout. So that it's more of an upfront cost as opposed to getting it on the back end. So some good information in the document, and for doing research and furthering your research into what do you charge and how much might you sort of budget for the cost of a full composition. There's a couple of different things to point out. Music for a video game is often charged or billed per minute of finished music. So people might charge at the very, very, very low end, $10 or $20 or $25 or $50 or $100 per minute of finished music. That can easily get into $200, $250, $500, $1,000, $2,000 per minute of finished music. It depends on how many musicians do you need, studio time, all this stuff budgeted in there. Certainly some for you as the composer for actually writing and creating everything. So figure out, there's lots of different ways of determining what you might charge for a project and how much you want to make annually and how many projects you have to work on. Figure out what you make now. Figure out what you want to make. Figure out what is your absolute bare minimum. Just keep the lights on, the family fed, food on the table. And of course, that's not what you want to work on for. That's the absolute bare minimum. And you want to work for 2 or 3 or 4 times than that to get to a more reasonable offer. Figure out what that means per hour, what that means per day or per week or per month. And just figuring out, take maybe your current job or the last job that you had, or a number that you really want to make, and figure out what that means in across hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and figure out what you might charge if you had just one project, if you had 2 or 3 projects going on at the same time, what that means. So that's a really difficult question to answer, and everybody has their own answer. And typically what happens is in the beginning you don't charge enough, and you screw yourself over, and you don't end up with enough money by the end of however long it is. But you work up your skills and the number of credits you have, and you build up your repertoire, and ended up charging more and getting with bigger and bigger clients overall. Another aspect, there's a great video that's included in the week 1 suggested watching, or suggested videos from the Game Sound Conference. It's a person named Brian Schmidt who heads up and created the Game Sound Conference. Brian Schmidt was the head of audio at Microsoft during the Xbox and the Xbox 360. He has since gone off to do his own freelance company. Is a very well-known person in the industry, and eventually started Game Sound Conference. And there's in that video, it's kind of an overview of audio for games. And one of the questions that is posed is, why are films easy and games are hard? And so we'll talk here a little bit about what makes audio for games unique compared to other media like film or television or most linear formats. So, compared to film, film audio, film music, film itself, the technology has been established for much longer than games. Film sound has its roots back to even the 1800s, but really it came into its own in, let's say, the turn of the century, 1900s, and certainly blossomed by the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and certainly up till today. And we have the massive film industry that we have now. So compare that to the games industry, where has its roots back to the 50s, when maybe people were playing video games on their simple Pong or on an oscilloscope or something like that. But the game industry as we know it really started with arcades in the 70s and 80s, and then home consoles through the 90s and 2000s, and up to now. We have mobile gaming, we have consoles, we have computers, all sorts of new variety of gaming. But let's say the 80s, right, is really when gaming took off. And so compare that to the 1880s of film audio. There's just much more established, much more time for trial and error in the film industry, and a little bit more mature overall. Game audio or games look to film as kind of the big brother of what's going on and how things have worked in the past. But of course, we have unique aspects of the interactivity with games. So, film sound is linear. Game sound is nonlinear. Every time you watch a film, you rewind it back, you hear the exact same thing. Every time you play a game, it would probably be a slightly different experience. So, there are very specific aspects of each one of them. The actual creation of the music is very much the same. It's still composition, recording, mixing, the production of the music, but its final form and how it's actually used, it certainly ends up being different. All right, so just a couple of different topics there. Why you might be interested in the game industry, as people transition from different media like music for games, music for film, and they want to get into music for an album, music for music's sake, film, and want to get into games. Where is the change, and where is the difficulty in the transition? And a lot of that comes from the interactivity of how do you make it so that the music plays back in the game, and understanding what the game is going to do with your music versus in film watching the same thing and it happening, existing in the same way every single time. All right, so the next topic here is a couple of ideas or topics of what would make a successful game composer. What are some of the skills that you would bring to the table? What is kind of expected overall? What makes it a bit smoother to be involved or interested in the games industry? Hold on a sec. Let me take another quick pause here. All right. So, what would make a successful game composer? Well, certainly having a love for video games, a love for what you do would be a good place to start. And this goes for whatever part of the industry you want to work in, right? If you want to work in the music industry, you need to be listening to tons of different types of music. What is popular out there? Why is it good? Or why is it popular? Is it popular? Is it good? Do those mean the same thing necessarily? Um, Understand that clients speak in terms of previous projects. So in a music recording session or in a composition session, songwriting session, they refer to, hey, did you hear that sound, or did you hear that kick drum, or that effect that they had on the vocal, or did you hear how they transitioned from the verse to chorus? And whatever aspect it is, you need to have a language of music and a previous experience with albums and listening and critically listening, so that when discussing it with a client, you understand what they're talking about and you have that perspective, that context. Same thing goes with film. If you're interested in the film industry, you should be watching tons of film. You should be paying attention to film, have a language of film, watch the credits, figure out who the director is, the producer, the production company, figure out who the composer is, how they created the music, any sort of behind the scenes that you can get your hands on or access to understand the language that clients would speak when talking about film projects. Same thing goes for games. If you are interested in the games industry, you should be playing tons of video games. You should be paying attention to the games, how they work, how they interact, how does the music interact with the game. Not just playing games for fun's sake, but playing them to critically listen to what is going on. How does the music move and progress? How does the player have control? And it's certainly not a difficult road to start down, because it is playing video games. It's certainly a lot of fun, but it is actually one of the more, I don't know, I want to say challenging, but one of the more difficult aspects of the job is to actually spend the time to play these games, because the games take tons of time. I don't actually play games all that much. The best game that I play is the games that I work on constantly. But it can be a chore to sit down and actually spend some time to play some video games. But it's absolutely important that you keep up in the industry that you want to be involved in. If it happens to be music, film, games, doesn't matter. So you keep up and you enjoy the field that you are in. Unafraid of creative and technical challenges. This is definitely a reality in games. Working on a game, means you are working on a broken game for the length of the project, for a couple of months, a year or so, however long you are involved in the project. The game doesn't really exist. It's not done. It's not finished. So it's crashing, it's breaking. You might just get pieces and parts of it over time. So unafraid of understanding how things work and why it's not working, and understand how your music is actually being affected by the game, how it pieces it all together. I find one of the most interesting aspects is that my music, my sound effects, don't exist in their final form until somebody plays the game. So I have to make it so that when they do play the game, it's as interactive and as amazing as possible. So that's it's like a puzzling and piecing it all together. Desire for a new art form. This is certainly a definite benefit in games. Is it's new technology. Games are constantly getting better every year. They're pushing the technology. There's all sorts of changes, which means there's new opportunities in the industry. For a long time, they said, okay, we invented these machines that you put quarters into, and you have to go to the arcade to play your video games. And then they said, oh, well, like in the 80s and 90s, they're like, well, actually, we made these little boxes, home consoles that you can take, and you can play your games at home. And then we said, oh, we invented the internet, and now you can play games online and multiplayer, using multiplayer, play against your friends across the town or across the world. Then they invented mobile devices and said, okay, now all of our games are on these little tiny cool devices. Now these days they're getting into virtual reality. Hey, we invented these boxes that you put on your head and it totally feels like you're inside the game. It's a completely new change and a new art form and a new way of going. It all needs music. It all needs sound. And it has some just, yeah, great new directions to head. And so if you're interested in being involved in and what's upcoming and new and changing concepts, it's a very good place to be. Passion for composition. This really is beyond games. This is just being a music composer and being involved in the music industry. Passion for composition should be probably a number one. If you want to do nothing else, it is to write music. It is to make music because you're going to be doing a whole lot of that. Sometimes it's going to be awesome and it's going to be perfect and completely flow out of you. Other times you're going to want to hit your head on the wall a whole bunch of times just to hopefully force the music out. Composition is the fun and easy part. All of the stuff that you've been learning all through this degree program, the music theory, the composition, the orchestration, recording, mixing, all of those techniques, that's the fun and easy part. Once you're actually working, you're happy when you sit down in your studio and start working, because the real challenge is finding clients, working with clients, dealing with contracts, getting paid, dealing with the whole business side of keeping your lights on and keeping your business going. That becomes the way more challenging part beyond actually making music. So passion for composition is one of those things where if you had all the money in the world, you were you were successful, you had a whole bunch of money, you'd probably still want to be making music. And if you had no money in the world, you hopefully still had the opportunity that you would be still wanting to make music. So it's at the heart and soul of what you're going to be doing, and you hopefully enjoy it because you're going to be doing a whole bunch of it. Team member. This is always very important to understand the fact that you are not ultimately in creative control over the game and maybe even where the music is going. It is a team sport. You are a piece of a much larger engine that's moving forward. Sometimes musicians get very, very, very attached to their music and do not want to have anybody else have control or have any say in the direction. They want to have complete control. That is certainly not going to work very smoothly in the games industry, where I pretty much guarantee that the first version of anything that I send off to a client, they're going to not accept, and it's not going to be the perfect home run every single time. So you have to be able to adjust and come up and fulfill the client's final creative vision. And then probably out of all of these, the thing that makes you successful, right? A lot of these are what makes you a game composer, but what actually makes you a successful game composer is the fact that you are a small business, that you are dealing with the clients, finding clients, negotiating contracts, figuring out what to get paid, paying all the subcontractors, any artists or musicians or engineers that you work with, making sure that you budget everything so that your family is well taken care of and your company is well taken care of. You have to deal with taxes and insurance and saving for retirement and all of those fun adult sort of things that love to take at your money, so you have to keep making more of it. So understanding what to get paid so that everything else can get paid off, all your bills can get paid so that you can have some money left over in your wallet. That becomes the challenging part. Again, going back, making music, that is hopefully the most comfortable place. I don't want to say it's easy by any means, but it's the most comfortable place. But being a successful business owner, if you're just sitting in your studio the entire time, nobody's ever heard of you, you're not networking, you're not talking with people, finding opportunities out there, then it's going to be just way more challenging overall. You can make the best music in the world, but nobody's ever heard of you, and you're going to have a difficult time making a salary or making your income off of it. So half of your job is networking. You should be just as good as at going and meeting people and talking and networking as you are at making music, or at least those are the truly successful people, and that's really hard to do. spending just as much time. So all I'm asking from you is that you completely understand music theory, composition, recording, engineering, production of music, finding clients, negotiating contracts, networking. Obviously, this is a huge pile of stuff, and it takes time, and it takes time to grow and develop all of this stuff. But it is just as important to be mindful of your business and your income and where the checks are coming from, and working nicely with your clients and exceeding their expectations. People will keep coming back to you. In the beginning, it's slow and far between, but as you get more notoriety, more credits, it picks up steam very, very quickly. So those are just a couple of different ideas overall of getting involved in the industry. Checking the time here, it is going to be 5 o'clock, and I do have a couple more topics that I want to hit, and I will keep going because I want to finish everything out, get us back on track for this week. But if you need to drop out, that's perfectly fine. I understand. I do typically set up the classes from 3:30 to 5, and if you need to finish out and catch the archive, you can do that. But I will continue on with our other topics here. So our next topic here is discussing different jobs in the industry. We're going to talk about different, like the chain of command, who hires you, who do you work with, the audio team, and how does the audio team work in a larger game team overall. So there are two main paths that you typically go down in the industry as a whole, and this really is the case with the music industry. There are in-house jobs, and there are freelance jobs, or sometimes lovingly known as outhouse jobs, where in-house is you are hired by the game company, you go move to their city and work in their offices, and you are there full time. You get a paycheck every 2 weeks. They take taxes out of the check. You get retirement and benefits and all of those things. And there's really great aspects of working in-house because you don't have to chase down clients. You don't have to wonder where your next check is coming from. But some of the drawbacks are you only have one game that you're probably working on for an extended amount of time. And you don't often have much creative control over the direction that things are headed. Freelance world. There are definite benefits of freelance. You are your own boss. You work the hours that you want. You go to your studio in your bunny slippers because you work in your own home studio. You work with the clients that you want. But the reality of all of that is you're your own boss, which means that you have to have enough self-determination to get your butt out of the bed each morning to actually go do your work and follow through with all your work and clients, because nobody else is going to be there yelling at you to make sure you do that, which is most people in this industry are self-driven, and that comes with the package. You set your own rate and make the money you want, which means that you're typically chasing down clients, and you can be making more money overall. Established freelance composers certainly can make more money than in-house composers because they work on multiple different projects and they can negotiate their rates a little bit more independently. It's instead of a check every 2 weeks, they can negotiate what each project holds for them. You set your own hours, but you're probably working twice as hard as everybody else to not only do all of the music work, but to be a business and network and continue getting the snowball rolling down the hill to pick up steam. Snowballs don't pick up steam, but so anyway, there's good and bad things to all of that. A lot of music composition in the industry is freelance because one of the things that you bring to the table is you bring your studio, you bring your gear. They don't have the opportunity to build all of that stuff in their offices, so if they can just hire somebody that has a pretty nice home studio setup that they've been building up over their career, that makes it very beneficial. So you set up your own sort of terms and the world that you operate in. Independent, self-employed, mostly work for hire, work out of your home studio. Set up an LLC or S corp, setting up yourself as a business so that if anything goes wrong, they take down your business as opposed to you personally. You set up for taxes and you set up your safety net so that it works against your business. What's happening? Write off all of your entertainment, all of your games, all of your consoles, all of your hardware, your software, movies and music. You can do that now as a student in the working in the entertainment field. But networking, always very, very important to keep your name out there and to keep involved, because you'll work really, really hard on a project. You'll stick your neck out, and then you won't have any friends or clients out there because you've been working so hard for the past 6 months. You haven't kept up on what everybody's doing. The next one here, developers and publishers. These are common terminology that I'll talk about throughout the entire month. So I want to just hit on a couple of things, and there's some publishers up here that you might recognize, like Electronic Arts or Valve or Sega or Atari, Ubisoft, Activision, Square Enix. And developers and publishers, all the different game companies that we'll be kind of just generally referring to. I like to think about this similar to labels and recording artists and their production team. The people that go actually make the album, and the record label that provides the upfront cost and ultimately the marketing and distribution of the album. So game publishers are like record labels, where with a record label, they sign their artist, they give them an advance of money up front, and they say, go to a studio, record an album, give us the album back, we'll make millions of copies of it and sell it out to the general public. Game publishers, very, very similar. Game developers are like the artists. Game publishers provide the money, the budget to the game developers to make the game. The game developers are actually the team of artists and programmers and audio folks. Their audio team, the game developers, would hire you as the music composer. You work for the game developer, they make the game, they send it back to the publisher that then makes it millions of Xbox or PlayStation discs and sells it to everybody across the world, and everybody shares in the money. So similar in idea, in concept, as I talk about publishers and developers over the course of the month. You get just a bit of an understanding of what I'm referring to. So as we talk about game developers, let's talk about the actual teams of people working at those development companies. Typically, as a music composer for a game, you are hired by a game developer making a game. And depending on if it's the very, very large companies like Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony, they have lots of employees and lots of games that they're making concurrently or simultaneously, so that there's the biggest companies out there that have lots of people wearing individual hats doing individual jobs. There's also the really, really small independent game companies that might be one person and you are there as the one audio person. Or they might be a team of 5 or 10 or 20 people and you were hired as the one audio person. And so we're going to be talking about probably more towards the size of big, large companies, so we can talk about all these different types of jobs out there that they might have. If you look at one game company, you will not see all of these game jobs. But if you looked at a lot of different companies, you would probably see them because they're all named different things at different companies. They have different job titles and different chain of command and how they organize their company. But the job roles here that we see will be general setup that you might notice in a company. Hold on just a sec. So, audio director. Now, if your game company makes multiple games simultaneously, an Activision company or Blizzard or Take-Two or Rockstar or Electronic Arts, these I'm rattling off some big game companies, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, they are all making multiple games at the same time. There's typically an audio director, a one person that is at the head and oversees all of the audio for all of these games. They are in charge of determining schedules, deadlines, and budgets, figuring out how many people that they might need to hire, how much manpower they need to put on a project, and how much money do they need to throw at it, and then what is the deadline to get it all taken care of and done. So, if there's multiple games, there's typically an audio director. An audio lead is the main point person in creative control for all of the audio for one game. They are head of audio for just one of those games. They take the money, they take the budgets, the deadlines that are set out by the director, and then they make it happen. They hire the teams of people. The audio lead would hire you as the music composer, probably with insight from the audio director, input from the audio director, the rest of the audio team, but they have ultimately creative control. So they hire you, they probably work with you directly, making sure of how the music is created, how does it go, if any sessions need to be set up. They might be involved in that. Audio leads initially are more involved in the design, in the meetings, in the scheduling, in the management of it. But as it gets down more towards the deadline, they'll definitely get their hands in there and get working. Or they might be working all the way through. Music manager. If your game is large enough that it has a very complex music soundtrack, if you're doing large orchestral recording sessions, or your game requires a soundtrack from a lot of different artists or composers, you might need a music manager, where this role is kind of like a producer, where they're not making the music, but they are guiding the whole process. If the composers got enough work on their plate with just making the music, they might hire the studio. They might go to they'll hire the orchestra. They'll get everything set up so that the composer can get everything recorded. We have a graduate from Full Sail working at Sony, working at Sony Computer Entertainment of America, and is a music manager out there, and has worked on the Uncharted series, Last of Us game, and a number of different Sony titles. And he talks about going and recording at Abbey Road or at Ocean Way in Nashville or in Sony production studios in Los Angeles, and setting up for these large orchestral sets so that the composer can get in there and get their music recorded. So that's more of the management side of things. They deal with the large ideas in the audio team. Now more of the individual artists. Music composer, of course, this is probably you in this whole process. This is mostly what we'll be talking about and elaborating throughout the month. Responsible for all creation, performance, and production of the game music. So they, especially in a smaller team, you are the audio person. You are probably the smartest person in the room when talking about audio, just in the same way that they're the smartest person in the room talking about the game. And in a small team, they might look at you and go, "Hey, music person, tell us what we need. I can tell you whether I like it or not, if it's cool or not, but I can't tell you what to do." So, I'm currently working with Electronic Arts on Madden 17. Electronic Arts working on Madden, they do it every single year. They know exactly what they want. They come in with a contract and they say, "This is what we want," and we give that exactly back to them, and everybody's happy and they go their separate ways. But on other games we are hired on, they hire us as the audio team and they look at us and they go, "What do we need?" And then that's great because you have a lot of creative control and you have a lot of guidance in the direction of the music, but it's also sometimes not so great because you have to have all of the ideas, which is sometimes no problem. But other times it's like, yeah, you have tons of ideas and they just keep shooting them down. And so just trying to figure out the balance of what is needed. So a lot of times it is left up to the music composer as to what is actually going to be the result of the music. As I mentioned earlier, the budget of a game might be figured out by per minute of finished music. So whether that's $100 or $500 or $1,000, depending on the size and scale of if it's all done in the box, you need to charge less than doing a full orchestral session where you have to hire artists. So determining what that rate is a common way by determining per minute of finished music. Sound designers. Often a music composer is a freelance role. Sound designers are often in-house, working directly with the programmers, working with the artists. If you write a piece of music, if you write a 3-minute long piece of music, there could easily be 1,000 audio files, 1,000 sound effects played in those 3 minutes. So sound designers have to work so much more closely with the programmers and the artists in the games. There are tons of there's tons of sound design work. There's monsters and explosions and weapons and vehicles and levels and characters and all of this different, whether it's dialogue recording or it's sound design. There's just tons of different work that is necessary. So they are working very, very closely with the rest of the team to get that job done. Probably some of the people that they're working with are audio programmers and implementers. There's typically somebody on the programming team that is dedicated to audio, to make all of the dark magic that happens in the background to make everything work. They, for some amazing reason, that they can go into a blank text document and start pounding away at code, and out comes a game. Well, not the audio programmers, but at least game audio. So they are working very, very closely with you to make sure that the audio files play back and music files play back correctly. Outside of the audio team, there are the artists. If there's 5 or 10 audio people on a team, there's easily 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 artists on the team. There's just kind of like sound effects. There's just so much art that is necessary for these games. Programmers, again, these are the people that create the game. They create the gameplay. They take all of our art and sound, music, and hook it all up together with the computer to provide interactivity. A lot of times they don't speak the language of creativity and music, and you don't really speak the language of tech and programming. So to make those things work together takes some effort. And often there are people that can kind of blur those lines and go back and forth. And then there's the quality assurance team. These are the people that break the game and they find all the bugs, and they are the last line of defense before the game is released out to the public to identify any bugs, any errors or issues with the game, and then send it back to the team. They won't tell you, like, they're not there to critique your music or tell you your music sucks, but they will tell you that, hey, I fought this this enemy in the level and it didn't play the right music, and then it didn't stop, and then it didn't transition over here to the new music, and it's just not playing back correctly. And so it's a great way of getting involved in the industry. You are playing games all the time, but you're not really playing games for fun. You're just playing to break them and find all of the issues. And then you write up a bug report and send it off to the team to get it fixed. But there's a great opportunity there because a lot of game companies like to hire from within. So they'll go to their QA team first and say, hey, who knows, understands audio and sound design? And maybe you've been working with the team and you are already familiar with and comfortable with that. Some other terminology here that I want to introduce is game music implementation. And I'll talk more about this through the rest of the month, but it is something that I do throw out there every once in a while, so I do want to define the terminology here a little bit. Implementation is the process of actually getting the music into the game. As you work on a game, in the beginning, there is no game, there is no music. And so they build the game, and you start writing music, and you send it to them, and there's revisions, and there's approval, and eventually more and more of the music that you've written gets approved and gets ready to get put into the game. So there's a folder filled with WAV files that needs to be hooked up and set up in the game so when they hit buttons on the controller, the correct sound plays. So implementation is the process of setting up your music to play back correctly in the game. Let's say that you had a big monster battle at the end of a game level. They're often called like boss battles. The last big character that you have to fight to progress to level 2 or level 3 or whatever. So in that boss battle, you want to walk into the room and the monster jumps out and you want to hear monster reveal music. And so that is a piece of music that you have composed. Then there is the battle music. All right, so there's monster reveal, it roars, and then you're ready for the battle. Then we want to hear battle music level 1. So you fight the monster for a little while, and then you hit them 3 times, and they go all mad, and they maybe start another attack or do something different, and then it gets to battle level 2. And so you now have battle level 2 music. It switches and transitions. You fight the monster, you hit him 3 more times, and it switches to battle level 3. And you fight the monster some more and more, and then eventually there's either win or lose. You're either going to defeat the monster or the monster is going to defeat you. So we have a couple of different levels of interactivity here. We have the monster reveal or the intro. We have battle level 1, battle level 2, battle level 3, and then eventually you either have to win or lose. So you go off and you write all of that music. You're like, hey, wouldn't that be really cool if we could get this battle monster music to play like this? And they say, yeah, okay, let's get this set up. So you go off and you write battle level 1, 2, and 3, monster intro music, win, lose. You write 5 different audio files. They go off and they go into the game and they say, okay, when you go through this doorway, then the monster jumps out and gets revealed. And it's going to be play monster reveal dot wave. And then the battle starts and it's going to play battle level 1 dot wave. And then you fight them and then you go battle level 2 dot wave and battle level 3 dot wave. And then you either have monster win or monster lose. And so setting all of that up, which file plays, does it loop? Does it mix with any other files? When does it start? When does it stop? All of that is setting up the real-time mix in the game. So when the player plays the game, it reacts exactly as it should. So you are setting up the interactive behavior of how the music is actually going to work in the game. There's one stage of actually writing and composing the music, and then there's a separate stage of actually putting it into the game, mixing everything so that it works together. It's kind of like an album. There's one stage of actually writing all the music and recording it, and there's another stage of mixing it down into the final stereo mix that goes on the CD or onto the wherever else it's going to go. So implementation is very, very loosely related to mixing, or at least audio mixing is a part of implementation in the game, but it is really just getting the music to set up correctly to play back in the game. And so the thing that actually plays back the music in the game, well, it's not a thing really. It's a piece of software. It's code somewhere in the background. We don't really have to think about it that way all that much. It's kind of like using Pro Tools or Logic. If we sat there and thought about it too hard, thought about it too long, we probably, yes, it is software. You kind of just generally understand somewhere it's code. Some programmer had to make Logic or Pro Tools. But we don't have to think about it that way. That's not really, you never really have to deal with that. You use the interface. You load up Logic, and there's faders and there's knobs and there's buttons and inserts and tracks, and that's the way you interact with the WAV files and the audio. You don't have to think about code, but if you move the fader around, all it's really doing in the background is adjusting code. So there's something there in the DAW that is playing back the music. We don't really have to think about it that way, but there's something in there. Same with the game. There's something in the code, in the software that's playing back the music. We don't interact with it that way. We just feed it WAV files. But what we're talking about here is a game music system. The thing and the way that the music is actually played back. Every single game is different. Maybe unless you have like a sequel but mostly it's all going to be a different approach for the music from one thing to the next. So when we're talking about a music system in a game, this is the thing that plays back the music. And more specifically, we're talking about a dynamic music system. Dynamic music system means the music changes and it reacts to what the player is doing. The opposite of a dynamic music system is a static music system. A static music system does not change. iTunes is like a static music system. You hit play, it plays the song, it stops, it's done, that's it. But with a game, the music might need to react. You might have battle level 1, 2, and 3, and win and lose, and all these things that need to switch and change, and that is a dynamic music system. So a dynamic music means something's going to change in it. And then we have a couple of categories. We have how is it going to change? Is it going to be adaptive? Is it going to be interactive or generative? So these are more specific terms, but probably stuff that you might be familiar with from games. Adaptive means that the music changes in the game, but the player does not have direct control. It adapts to the world around the player. You run out of time, right? In Super Mario Brothers, if it gets less than 100 seconds, it speeds up and it goes da, 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 and tells the player, hey, you better speed up or else you're going to lose here. So maybe it reacts to the amount of time left or amount of health left. If you have low health, you get a thumping heartbeat. Says, okay, now you better go find and get back to 100% health. If you're in first place or last place, or there's danger around, or there's a lot of enemies around, all of these things can change the music while the music is adapting to the world around the player, but the player does not have direct control. That is an interactive system. An interactive system, probably the best example of this would be Guitar Hero or a Rock Band or something like that, where the player is actually hitting buttons to do something to make the music play. Or play back correctly. And if you don't hit the right button in the right order, then you hear a little mess up sound on the guitar for a Guitar Hero game. So interactive music systems, if the player is actually hitting a button or doing something that is or adjusting the music, it's a bit more interactive overall. And generative music system. This is where the music is being built in real time. There is no pre-composed music. There might not even be wave files. The music is generated by the computer in reacting to the game. There are some examples out there. Probably the most recent example is a game coming out called No Man's Sky, where the entire game is procedurally generated. Nothing exists before the game is actually played. So this is where the composers say, oh no, the computers have taken over. The computers are just going to generate the music for them for the game. You don't need the human composer anymore. But that's certainly not the case. Generative music still hasn't hit the point where it is fully realized. We've done generative music since the time of Mario and Nintendo, but we still haven't made a computer beyond the same caliber as a human composer. There's so much humanity that we put into our music. So while it is possible, it is not necessarily as musical as something that is composed by human for very obvious reasons. It's very, very difficult to teach a computer to play music in the same way that a human can. So our last topic here is the game development production cycle. I wanted to hit on a couple of ideas here, a couple of stages in the process and the creation of a game. And we're going to put this in terms that you might already be familiar with. Hopefully you've heard the terms of pre-production, production, and post-production. This is very common for a film, where pre-production is script writing, casting and rehearsal. Production is on set, filming the movie. Post-production is editing and effects and music and sound design. So they're very common stages in film productions, more of where it came from. In music, pre-production would be songwriting and rehearsal. Production would be the recording session, and post-production would be the mixing and mastering session. So there really isn't much of a pre-production, production, post-production model in games. Most of it all is production because you're not filming anybody on a set and then going back and editing it and adding effects. Everything is done in the game, so they just keep building the game as long as then they can until it's done. So, but to still fit it into the categories, there's just some ideas here of how things are set up in a game. Pre-production would be hiring the teams, determining the equipment that's involved. Is it going to be a mobile game or a console game or a PC or a Mac game? Determining schedules and budgets, figuring out what is involved in actually creating the game, how much time is involved. Creating a design document. There's often documentation of so that they can show investors and the publishers what they're actually creating before it's done. So there's documentation created for that. If sometimes you are hired on in the early stages, and a lot of times there's not much of a game, so there's not much need for music, but sometimes they'll hire you months in advance and say, hey, we just need you to write kind of a mock-up of what the music might sound like for the game so we can get down some design aesthetics. And they'll figure out, you'll write, I don't know, 15 minutes or maybe an hour's worth of music and say, this is generally what I think the game should sound like. Here is the fast times, and here's the slow times, and here's the emotional times, and here's the puzzles and the fighting and the action, and just giving a general design. And they'll take that and they'll give it off to their artists. That'll start inspiring them to create the art for the game. And then you'll leave for a couple of months and they'll come back to you and say, hey, we now have a game that needs to be finished out. Go ahead and create the rest of the soundtrack. So this might be conceptualization, spotting, just coming up with ideas and writing out some initial music to make sure that you're kind of in the right direction. So like I said, production is mostly where the game is being made. This is where you are just churning out music as much as you can, testing it out in the game. You might be doing some implementation of it while the game is, while you're still writing music. Anything that's finished and approved is going off to the team and they're putting it in the game and they're testing it out. Play testing is testing the game, playing the game as much as you can. Prototyping is testing out your audio in tools that are outside of the game and not your DAW. Where you can, a lot of teams will create tools that will allow you to test, like you need to fight that last monster in the game. Well, you don't want to have to load the game up and fight all the way through that up to that point just to test out to see if your music works. So they'll add in cheats or hacks or what are sometimes known as prototypes that are test abilities to test how things might sound in the game. And post-production here, you might be familiar with some of this terminology from software, alpha software or beta software. You might have gotten a beta version of some software or audio software at times. Alpha is when alpha is before it's released out to the public. It is still supposedly a complete version of the game, but it's completely full of bugs, and they're trying to fix it. And but they're showing it off to the team and to publishers overall. Beta, if your game has millions of people playing it, they're all on multiplayer online on servers. They have a currency or some sort of money that's flowing through the game. You might want to test all of that out. You probably can't test that out with a team of 100 people when there are going to be millions of people blasting the game, trying to get it to making sure it works. So beta software is released out to the public to test out the game to see how it works. Overwatch just had a new game called Overwatch, has had a very, very popular beta period. Where it was kind of showing off, and then they go fix some things before they release it finally out to the public. And then, like I said, the quality assurance team is there to find bugs, to test the game. It's the last line of defense before it's released out to the public. But even then, with software has bugs. Software has updates. So they patch software. You play a game, and as soon as you put the game in, it updates, and so games constantly move on. There was one of the best things that I found in the games industry is whenever I worked on a music album, when it was done, it was released, and I was over. It was over. Whenever I worked on a commercial project, it was released, and that project was done. I was on to the next thing. But games keep on going. There's extra content. There's downloadable levels. There's characters, new worlds, and that all needs audio and music. So I'm still working on a game that was released a year and a half ago because the developers just keep making more and more content for it. So if you have any questions, I think we'll end up there. It's certainly enough from me for this afternoon. I'll stick around for a few minutes in the chat, but we will end there, and make sure you start working, get your head wrapped around the assignments if you haven't already. Play the video game, check out all the technology for your game capture and your composition as a whole. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Actually, here in the chat. Have you had a chance to check our posts about the music we like in games we've played? No, that is a mission for tomorrow overall, but I always appreciate checking out what everybody is up to in their games experience. So I look forward for that. All right. You have a good afternoon and weekend, and I will catch up with you on next Tuesday. All right. Thanks a lot.